The first thing I learned about the Varelian Palace was that silence there carried weight. Not the peaceful kind. Not the reverent hush of a cathedral. This silence pressed against the ears, dense and watchful, as if the walls themselves were listening and judging whether you belonged. I absolutely did not. I stood at the edge of the grand receiving hall, a human among beings who measured their lives in centuries and their pride in empires. The Varelians were tall, elegant, and faintly luminous, their skin shifting colors with emotion. Blues of calm, golds of amusement, deep violets of restrained anger. Right now, the room shimmered in ceremonial silver, anticipation. Queen Aurelice sat upon the star throne at the far end of the hall, a living symbol of an empire that spanned 17 systems. Her crown hovered above her brow, a ring of orbiting crystal shards humming with power. She was younger than most expected, sharp-eyed and terrifyingly composed. I was not supposed to be here. I was Elias Morin, human, logistics officer, cultural liaison by accident. The kind of person who ended up in royal palaces because someone needed a translator who wouldn't faint under pressure. Apparently, I passed that test. Tonight marked the Treaty of Luminous Accord, the formal alliance between humanity and the Varelian Empire. Decades of tension, cautious diplomacy, and whispered fear were about to crystallize into history. One wrong move would echo across the stars. No pressure. The hall filled with the soft chime of attendants moving into position. Dishes floated forward on anti-grav trays, each one a masterpiece of alien cuisine, spirals of bioluminescent fruit, crystalline liquids swirling with internal light, and the centerpiece, a single chalice forged from starlight alloy. The Queen's Cup. Only Queen Aurelice was permitted to drink from it. Tradition dictated that the first sip sealed any treaty. The symbolism was clear: trust, vulnerability, unity. I'd read the briefing a dozen times. Still, something about the cup made my stomach tighten. As the chalice drifted closer to the throne, I noticed it. A flicker, barely visible. A ripple of color that didn't match the ambient glow. Where the liquid inside should have shimmered pale gold, there was a thin vein of dark iridescence, like oil on water. My heart skipped. I leaned forward instinctively, eyes narrowing. Varelians perceived color more precisely than humans. If I could see it, others should too. But no one reacted. The palace guards remained statues of polished armor and controlled power. The high viziers stood serenely, their skin calm silver. Even the queen's expression remained unchanged as her hand lifted slightly, beckoning the chalice closer. I swallowed. Something was wrong. My mind raced through possibilities. Diplomatic theatrics? Unlikely. A cultural nuance I didn't understand? Maybe. Or poison. The words slammed into me with horrifying clarity. Varelian toxins were notoriously complex, engineered to bypass regeneration and disrupt neural resonance. Humans weren't even studied extensively, too insignificant, too short-lived. If this was poison, it wasn't meant for me. The chalice hovered inches from the queen's lips. I didn't think. I moved. The gasp that followed me echoed through the hall as I stepped out of line, crossing sacred distance in 3 long strides. Guards shifted, hands moving toward weapons, but protocol froze them. No one attacked a treaty delegate without cause. I reached the queen's side and did the unthinkable. I grabbed the chalice. Gasps rippled like a shockwave. Colors flared across Varelian skin. Anger, confusion, alarm. Human. One of the viziers hissed, violet flashing along his temples. You violate. I didn't let him finish. I raised the cup and drank. The liquid burned. Not like acid. Like cold fire, spreading through my chest, crawling up my spine and into my skull. The world sharpened painfully, every sound slicing too cleanly, every light too bright. My knees buckled, and I barely registered the chalice clattering to the floor. The palace fell silent. Not ceremonial silence. Real silence. I tasted metal. My heart hammered once, twice, then stuttered like it was trying to remember how to beat. I collapsed, vision tunneling as Varelian voices exploded into chaos. Poison. Seal the hall. Metacast now. I lay on the cold floor, staring up at the vaulted ceiling, its starscape mosaic blurring. My lungs burned as if they were filling with ice. So this is how it ends, I thought dimly. Not bad. At least it's dramatic. A shadow fell over me. Queen Aurelice knelt beside my head, her face no longer composed. Her skin glowed a fierce, fractured gold shot through with red, shock and fury intertwined. "Why?" she demanded, her voice trembling despite herself. "Did you do that?" I tried to smile. It came out crooked. Didn't look safe, I managed. Her eyes widened. The medics arrived in a flurry of motion, crystalline instruments humming as they scanned me. Their colors shifted rapidly, panic bleeding into disbelief. "This toxin," one began, then froze. "It is tuned to Varelian biology. It should not affect a human," another finished softly. "Yet it does." I coughed, a wet, painful sound. "Guess, I'm adaptable." Darkness crept at the edges of my vision. I felt hands lifting me, a floating stretcher forming beneath my back. The Queen's hand closed around mine. "Do not die," she said, not as a command, but a plea. "You stole my fate. I will not accept the debt unpaid." I wanted to say something heroic. Instead, I blacked out. I woke to white. Sterile, luminous white, broken by soft pulsing lines of alien script. Machines hummed around me, their rhythms oddly soothing. My body felt heavy, distant, like I was operating it through water. "You are awake," a familiar voice said. I turned my head slowly. Queen Aurelice stood beside the medical platform, no crown, no throne. Just her. "How long?" I asked. "3 cycles," she replied. "By your reckoning, approximately 47 hours. I murmured. "Missed the party." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, then vanished. "You nearly ended our alliance before it began." "Sorry." "You saved it," she corrected. "And my life." She gestured, and a holographic projection blossomed above us. The chalice, magnified. The dark vein I'd seen pulsed clearly now. "The poison was encoded to activate upon contact with my neural signature," she explained. "A perfect assassination. No trace. No witnesses. Except," I said, "a nosy human." Her gaze softened. "You saw what none of us did." "Human pattern recognition." I shrugged weakly. "We're good at noticing when things are off." Silence settled between us, less heavy now. "The traitor has been identified," she said quietly. "One of my own viziers. He believed the alliance with humanity would weaken us. And instead," I said, "it almost killed me." "Yes." She leaned closer. "Your biology reacted unpredictably. The toxin did not kill you as intended. Instead, it triggered a cascade of cellular adaptation. You survived because you changed." "That sounds bad." "It is unprecedented," she said. "You now possess partial resistance to Varelian neurotoxins, a trait that should not exist." I blinked. "Do I get a medal?" Her laugh startled me. It was soft, genuine, and utterly unroyal. "You will receive more than that," she said. "The treaty was signed over your unconscious form. The Empire watched a human give his life, without hesitation, for a queen not his own. I swallowed. Did I actually die?
For 6 heartbeats, she said.
Yes.
Huh.
Welcome back, she added. The public ceremony was nothing like the one that should have been. There was no floating chalice, no rehearsed grandeur. Instead, the queen stood before her people and the gathered delegates of humanity, her voice carrying across the palace and beyond, broadcast to every system. Let it be known, she declared, that the first blood spilled for this alliance was human. Let it be known that when death came for your queen, a human stood between us without hesitation. The hall erupted, not in silence, but in thunderous resonance, a Varelian equivalent of applause that vibrated through bone and stone. I stood beside her, still a little unsteady, wearing a formal sash I definitely hadn't agreed to. The human Elias Morin, she continued, is hereby named Guardian of Accord, a title never before granted to an off-world. My communicator buzzed relentlessly. Earth was losing its collective mind. Later, as the palace lights dimmed and the crowds dispersed, I found myself on a balcony overlooking a city of living light. Queen Aurelice joined me, the stars reflecting in her eyes. You changed the course of 2 civilizations, she said. I just drank the wrong thing, I replied. She studied me for a long moment. In my people's history, she said, poison is the weapon of fear. To consume it willingly is an act of absolute courage. I exhaled slowly, the weight of it finally settling in. I was afraid. Yes, she said. And you acted anyway. We stood there in companionable silence. Somewhere in the palace, the echoes of that first, deadly silence still lingered, a reminder of how close everything had come to ending. Instead, it had begun, not with a crown lifted in triumph, but with a human who saw something wrong and chose to stand up and eat the poison meant for a queen. Years later, historians would argue about the exact moment the age truly changed. Some claimed it was the signing of the Treaty of Luminous Accord. Others pointed to the public execution of the traitorous vizier or the first joint human-Varelian fleet that crossed into unexplored space together. Queen Aurelice always gave a different answer. It changed, she would say, when silence fell in the palace and did not bring fear, but clarity. For Elias Morin, life never returned to anything resembling normal. The adaptation in his body stabilized, but it never vanished. Varelian physicians studied him for years, not as a specimen, but as a partner. What had happened inside him rewrote assumptions about biology, compatibility, and the limits of shared evolution. Human medicine advanced by decades. Varelian science learned humility. And politically, nothing was ever the same. Assassinations grew rarer. Poison became a taboo whispered about with discomfort rather than pride. An empire that had relied on secrecy learned the unsettling power of transparency, all because a fragile, short-lived species had reacted to danger by stepping forward instead of retreating. Elias was offered titles he declined and luxuries he ignored. What he accepted was quieter, a permanent place at the queen's side, not as a ruler, not as a symbol, but as something rarer, a reminder. On the anniversary of the treaty each year, they stood together in the grand receiving hall. The chalice was still there, cleansed, reforged, permanently empty. No one ever filled it again. The Varelians said it no longer needed to be. Trust, once paid for in blood, required no further proof. When silence fell now, it was different. It was the kind that comes after danger has passed, after choices have been made, after a future, once fragile, has hardened into something unbreakable. And at the center of countless retellings, etched into stone, light, and memory, was the same simple truth. An empire did not survive because it was strong. It survived because one human noticed something wrong, took a step forward, and chose to drink first.